I'd be asking you to give a brief overview of specific things that council wanted the APC to look at when they were reviewing this project. So if you'd like to just give us a bit of an overview. Thank you. Sorry for my lateness, but pressing times. Just to give you some concerns that council has expressed in the times that the project has come before them. Primary to council and certainly as expressed by the community is around the trees, both the cypress trees that are on 4th and the cherry trees there in the neighborhood line on 3rd, and have requested through the proponent to try and find some way to engage and keep those trees within the property and work around that. The other is just obviously looking at, it's been suggested a couple of times as to is there a way to incorporate that through a parking variance. So those are kind of the two primary things. Certainly the site is a definitive shape, so it requires certain structures to be put in that in a certain way. But so far in the examples and provided, council has not been happy with the loss of the trees, and that's more of the concern, but certainly looking forward to your input and thoughts on that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. So I'm going to turn this over to staff to introduce the application. Yep. Thought we had a motion. Yeah, we didn't. Oh, sorry. My apologies. So it was moved, seconded. So we get a motion to approve the minutes and a vote to approve the minutes. All in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you. All right. Over to take it away.
I'll try and be brief with my introduction here. So this proposal is for the development of a 4-story 75-unit apartment purpose-built rental building on the subject property at 9972 3rd Street. It is located between 3rd Street and 4th Street, just south of Henry Avenue. It does involve a rezoning application as well as a development permit and a development variance permit. The zoning amendment is required in order to change the zoning designation for the eastern portion of the property, which is currently zoned RM6R, to RM7. So the full property would be rezoned to RM7 in order to allow redevelopment at 4 stories as well as the proposed density. The 3 variances being requested are to decrease the minimum front yard setback on the western frontage of the property facing 4th Street in order to allow for projections of balconies and eaves into that front yard, as well as to relax the requirement for the siting of a rooftop access structure, and to increase the permitted height of a rooftop access structure. Just to give a bit of background on this property, previously the application went to council in September. Council made the recommendation to have the applicant revise the site layout in order to relocate driveways in order to minimize impacts on those protected trees that Councillor Duck had mentioned, as well as to provide a traffic impact study and then return to council. So the application did return to council back in February. The applicant presented several different site layouts that they had considered, and they went over the different site layouts they explored and how those might affect the protected trees on site. The applicant did proceed to move forward with the original layout, which is what we have in the APC package today, and council forwarded the application to APC to review further. In terms of the building itself, there's a range of 1 to 3 bedroom units. Each unit has outdoor a patio, outdoor private patio or balcony. There is also a rooftop patio for a common rooftop patio for all residents. Building has a solar panel array on the rooftop as well, and is being built to step 4 of the BC Energy Step Code. To get into the zoning a little bit further, previously the property was fully zoned RM7, but during the zoning bylaw update in 2024, a new rental tenure zoning was introduced called the RM6R zone. The eastern portion of the property contained 2 rental apartment buildings. So as part of that introduction of the rental tenure zoning, that section of the property was rezoned from RM7 to RM6R. So that's just a bit of background on why there's a rezoning amendment back to RM7.
RM7 was first?
It was first RM7, and then in 2024 it was changed to RM7 and RM6R. Yeah. And then next off, the application meets the off-street parking bylaw requirements. It has underground parking as well as surface parking. It has bicycle parking within the building envelope in the first story as well as in the underground parking area. It has sheltered parking outside to meet the Class 2 parking requirements on the south end of the property. One thing to mention in the next section of the staff report is the protected trees on site. So the access to both surface and underground parking is going through protected root zones of protected trees on site and off site. And it does require the removal of 1 protected Monterey cypress tree along 4th Street, as Councillor Duck had mentioned. Staff do note that the placement of fill or asphalt or damage to protected root zones is not permitted by the tree protection bylaw, and removal of a protected tree would have to go to council for approval. Staff have reviewed the application against the OCP's multi-unit residential guidelines and found that the application appears to generally meet those guidelines, but there are several that staff have highlighted for further review. Particularly, staff believe that some improvements of the design could be made to a few different portions, like access to the bicycle parking areas. There are some stairs in the areas where you would access bicycle parking. So I also believe that introduction of some sort of shading devices, particularly to the south side of the building, might be beneficial as well as some sort of variation to the hard surfacing on property, whether that be by permeable surfacing or other design variations. And I believe there might be one more item here. And so overall, staff are of the opinion that the proposed development and the requested zoning amendment is generally consistent with OCP, but we still do want to stress that there are several competing priorities on this property, and we still would like to highlight the importance of looking at prioritizing the retention of the existing protected trees on site. I will send it back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just a point of clarification, you covered in your comments, but in your discussions with the applicant, did you discuss alternative layouts?
We have discussed alternative layouts. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else you want to add, Allison? Anything?
No, Selena's covered it.
Okay, all right. I'm going to turn it over to the applicant. It's all yours.
How do we do we can do their presentation on the screen? Or?
I didn't receive any presentation prior, but if you have something on your laptop.
I
can put
I
in
did
the
both. I
USB.
got it on my laptop. You put it on this computer or
No.
put it on my own?
Do you have it on a USB stick?
Yep.
You can plug it in here and.
In here? Okay. The only thing on there.
I like to let me know I can share. So Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that's voting. I can get started. First and foremost, thank you to all APC members for having us here. My name is Dave Sargent. I'm a representative for High Street Ventures. It's been a long road to get to have this opportunity to speak before you today. And I do have a few prepared remarks, but mostly I look forward to engaging in a dialogue and answering questions that you may have about the project. Also, Rob and Gerald and Chris are here from the design team, so they can answer questions more specific to the actual architectural design, site layout challenges and benefits we've created for the site.
Just one moment.
That's okay. Well, that pulls up. I can keep going. So, who is High Street? We'd be on the second slide. We're a real estate development, construction, and property management company. And we're headquartered in Kelowna, but have strong roots on the island. Our founder actually grew up about 15 minutes from here and did his very first project on the island just over 20 years ago. Since then, High Street has built over 5,000 homes, nearly 1,800 of them to BC Step Code Level 4. We employ over 110 people, the majority in construction, and almost all of them partial owners in the company. We look not only to elevate our staff, but stake as well in our projects, which very much includes municipalities.
Sorry, we're just having
That's
some
okay.
technical
Yeah, when we get to
difficulties
slide 3, I'll keep going.
Okay.
First and foremost, I want to acknowledge staff for what is quite frankly a very thorough and extremely positive report. Reading through it was actually pleasant. Nearly every metric by which the project is being evaluated is positive. Staff clearly recognize that the proposal at 9972 3rd Street demonstrates appropriate density, height, alignment with the official community plan, zoning intent, use, purpose-built rental homes, strong sustainability and environmental design, positive architectural form and character, and an important contribution to Sydney's housing objectives. We sincerely appreciate this recognition and fully agree with these assessments. Up, down?
Not yet. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. However, my comments today focus on one specific issue, the application of the tree preservation bylaw. Because without resolution of this issue, all the other benefits and positive attributes of the project are effectively silent. So, should fix it.
Your email address.
I'll carry on. That places this commission in a challenging and somewhat unique position. Council has asked you as a voice of the community to provide input on the proposal as a whole. Yet in practical terms, the outcome of this project now turns to whether removal of one moderately healthy tree can be supported by the broader context of housing delivery, policy alignment, and professional mitigation. To be clear, I'm not here to make an argument against tree protection. It's an argument about outcomes, proportionality, consistency, and how different policy tools are meant to operate within the site environment. At a high level, the province has established a clear hierarchy for housing decision making. Provincial housing legislation and targets are set. The requirements for housing delivery. OCPs and housing needs reports translate those requirements into local policy zoning, and zoning implements that policy by determining whether and how much that housing is allowed. Development permits, design guidelines, and tree bylaws are implementation tools that shape how housing is built, not whether it occurs. Staff's report reflects this hierarchy clearly. Density, height, land use, form, and character have already been evaluated and essentially supported across all policy and zoning levels. The remaining question sits at the implementation stage, specifically the application of the tree preservation bylaw. Sydney is currently subject to the provincial housing target order requiring 468 new homes by 2029. In a largely built out community with small landmass, higher density infill projects like this one are essential. This project alone delivers 75 purpose rental homes, representing a meaningful portion of the long range housing target. If housing capacity is lost on sites that are already designated through the OCP to deliver it, those homes are not replaced easily elsewhere. The question is not intent. The intent is clear. The province has made that clear. The OCP has made that clear. The question is whether housing can actually be delivered. This brings me to a concept called functional density reduction. So even where density remains permitted or promoted on paper, if the implementation through lower level bylaw constrains site access, circulation, restricts massing, causes the loss of homes, and creates a situation where technically the homes are constructible, but due to non-financeability are not deliverable. So if we turn back to the tree, staff and APC have an independent arborist report prepared by Diamond Head Consultant. This was the second arborist report we had to confirm the first arborist report. The Monterey cypress is a non-native species in moderate condition that doesn't appear to on any Vancouver Island Forest Strategy's recommended planting list and is at the heart of the issue. It is suppressed by adjacent trees, doesn't materially contribute to Sydney's tree canopy, and is direct conflict with the required driveway access. The professional recommendation is removal of tree 951, and while retaining the remaining trees through low impact mitigation strategies. These strategies include above grade, zero excavation construction, permeable or floating driveway systems, geogrid over existing soils, and continuous arborist supervision. The arborist's opinion is not that development must avoid the area entirely, but that it must professionally be managed. All steps that we're completely in agreement with. So despite this guidance, the tree preservation bylaw is being interpreted in a manner that does not permit this mitigation or recommend replanting as allowed within the bylaw. The result is a requirement to redesign site access and massing in a way that constrains the buildable envelope, increases costs, potentially reduces parking, and places a single, moderately healthy tree above the long-term stated goals of the community. This seems like functional density reduction and a lack of proportionality at its finest. The concern is amplified when we examine how tree preservation bylaw has been applied elsewhere in Sydney. Publicly available permit records show numerous examples of tree removal approvals on low density residential property, including removal of healthy, species protected trees to accommodate driveways, foundations, utilities, and access requirements, often with the flexible mitigation and replacement approaches approved, as permitted within the tree bylaw, which makes sense. One forward and one more.
Be it.
Yeah. By contrast, our site is designed and is designated to deliver higher density housing and is being held to a stricter and more absolute standard. Constraints that have minimal impact on low density housing can eliminate circulation options, dictate massing, and directly lead to the loss of homes on multifamily sites. This asymmetry raises an important equity question. Lower density housing is generally higher cost, so applying greater regulatory flexibility in those contexts while constraining higher density housing has the practical effect of overburdening the delivery of middle income housing while comparatively relaxing the constraints on higher income housing. Staff are applying the bylaw, but fail to explicitly highlight that the bylaw accounts for situations like ours and allows for replanting as an appropriate measure. In the end, responsibility lies with council, and by extension, the advisory role of this commission to ensure that the implementation tools do not undermine higher level housing goals, policy, and frameworks as to how that housing is permitted. This is not a housing versus trees. This is about applying tree protection proportionately and consistently and in a manner that respects the established hierarchy of planning decisions. This project is supported by provincial housing targets, OCP policy, zoning and zoning intent, form and character, environmental sustainability, an independent professional arborist, and increases Sydney's tree canopy in the long term. We respectfully ask the Advisory Planning Commission to consider whether the current application of the tree preservation bylaw is truly applying the hierarchy of planning tools, as it seems much more like a reaction to a few complaints. No housing project is constructed without some trade-off. In this case, does a moderately healthy tree outweigh all other goals? Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. So before I bring this back to the commission, just would ask for my sake, if you could raise your hand if you want to speak so that I can keep track of the speaker order. So with that, does anybody want to start? Kelly?
It's been mentioned that you looked at some alternative access points, but I haven't heard what those alternatives were and why you chose to continue with the application.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, do you have those on your computer by any chance, or I could bring them up? I can give you a few minutes. Okay. Yeah, we can do that. What's taking some time? Okay. While Gerald's looking for those, the main crux of the issue, each option that we looked at, a bunch of them even suggestions at council of a few of the meetings, we end up encroaching on the root zone of those trees even more, depending on the layouts that you do. It becomes very difficult, and Robin Gerald can speak to this as well, as to where you can build the form of the building. Like the downzoning that happened in 2024, we went from the original project concept of doing a strata condo project. And the downzoning that happened, we were told, was to ensure retention of rental housing tenure. So Allison, you can speak to that. I don't want to misspeak here, but the intention was to basically force a conversation around rental tenure. Now, it's not something that we agreed with. It was a pretty difficult pill to swallow. We did relook at the project and came back with a rental project that's in front of you today. So on that zoning front, there wasn't an intent. Again, Allison Slade would have to speak to this. The intent was not to downzone the site, but it was to force a conversation about what the actual use of that site could be in the future, i.e. rental tenure housing, which we've come forward with as an opportunity. And in doing that, it makes it even more difficult to build a function and form that is affordable to the end user. So when we talk about functional density reduction, we can build just about anything, right? Or maybe that's a little bit egotistical, but we can't do it at a price point that we want to deliver to the market. So we want to be able to build affordable homes for this market. And if we start looking at forms and shapes, which we've done, we've probably looked at 15 different site plan options that become really expensive options. There's a reason why we're trying to come back and say, look, this is not easy. If it was this easy, we would just change it. We're not trying to be intransigent. We're not trying to be difficult and just stick our feet in the mud. We have looked at many different options, and we keep coming back to this as the most practical in terms of a parking layout, number of homes that we need to make the project work. And to Councillor Duck's point, if we were to look at a large parking variance, which originally when we started looking at this project, we were told parking variances were not looked at positively. So if we were to look at a large parking variance, which one of the other councillors had mentioned at our last council meeting, it was around 19 parking spots that we would be looking at as a variance. And we didn't think that that was something that the community would like over the loss of the one tree. So hopefully Gerald's able to pull up a few of the site plan options.
I think also while he's pulling it up, just to sort of carry on from what Dave was saying, So we looked at dozens of different site plan options, and after the council feedback, we showed a half dozen at the council meeting, and got the additional arborist input, got the traffic impact input, and so it was less of deciding to not change the plan, but more about finding that a lot of the aspects of the site plan really worked well, with, you know, one or two things notwithstanding, and found that the independent input that we had, professional input, seemed to justify the site plan from our perspective, based on, you know, the things that they were saying.
So Dave, are you able to get that site plan on the screen? It would be helpful for motion.
If it's what you shared at committee of the whole, or sorry, at the council meeting at the end of February, rather than switch laptops, because we have the Zoom meeting away from this one, we could pull up that meeting agenda. If it was it attached as to the staff report that went then, or was it your presentation?
Very likely.
Oh, great. Selena's gone.
And to be fair, with the ones that we picked, I don't even think we showed all of them, Gerald. We probably, I think that's one of the things that we did. We could have done a better job on initially when we came forward to council. And even at the last council meeting, we probably could have done a better job in exhausting the discussion around what was reviewed as an option before we landed on where we landed. I think that's the process that we worked through for several months with Rob and Gerald, and our construction team as well before we landed on something. So it's not that we picked something off the shelf and just said, oh, this is what we want to do. It was a long process to make everything work the way that it's working.
While they're doing that, do you want to go? Do you have some questions?
If you're ready to talk at this one, I could wait, but to keep the train of thought going. Well, maybe while we're waiting for that, if I could just ask staff, if the tree was to be removed, if council agreed to remove the tree, do the number of new plantings on the site meet the bylaw requirement for removing the tree or not?
I believe there's 17 plantings proposed.
Yeah. Okay.
That's correct. We have 17 proposed trees and an increase in canopy.
Okay. Thank you.
No, Robert.
Okay, sure. I'll ask a question that's related to this as well. Clarification question. There's 75 underground parking spots, 56, and there's 19 surface. That combined is the requirement for the parking. Okay. So if we take the tree of 951 is for removal for access to the driveway, not impacting housing. It's the parking, right?
Correct.
Okay. So the alternative plans that you've looked at, there was no other way to fulfill the underground opportunities for those 19 spots.
No, there definitely is. So that's the crux of what I'm not doing a great job of explaining, and that is that we can build anything, just about. But at the end of the day, if we have to be able to finance the project and deliver it to the market at a price point that we think is reasonable, we're simply adding cost to the end user, which increases rent for the end user. And on a project that is very difficult, as you can see from the media now, to deliver. It's not just us saying this. If we felt that was an easy thing for us to do, we would go ahead and do it. The other thing that I would point to there is then we also get into the critical root zones of those trees if we were to put all of the parking underground, and we would be building essentially to the lot line all the way around the building as a structural park trees, and we wouldn't be able to plant on top of that park tree with trees.
Do you want us to go forward on any of these slides to show to the group? This is what was shared with council at the end of February. This is the different design iteration.
3 slides forward?
No, upward.
That's the first page. So is it one of the design options that shows the parkade as was just described by Mr. Sargent?
Yes.
Yeah.
These are some of the.
I mean,
Yeah.
Down here.
That's one. So you can see on this option, this is all underground, if you don't mind saying. So here's the three trees, that's okay. Here's the three trees that we're talking about that are really at the crux of it, but really it's the one for this particular proposal. But as you can see, we would be well into the critical root zones of these trees. We would lose all three trees. And you can imagine trying to construct. So our wall is here, but we also have to excavate beyond just where that wall is located to get our formwork in there for people to work safely. So these trees are gone. Like we can't possibly work in that area and save those trees in that scenario.
The current design access to the underground parkade is on Fourth?
Third Street.
Third Street. Third Street, okay. And there's no way to do the driveway on Third Street where the access.
Third Street becomes more, or Fourth Street for the access becomes a little bit more difficult because of the geodetic elevation. Gerald, I'll let John.
You already got me in that word, so I'm just struggling that the three trees were one removed for the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other alternative in this footprint for parking lot.
That's a totally fair assumption. And again, coming back to the idea of it's not that we're sticking our feet in the ground. We wouldn't do this much work and just say, well, no, there's no possible way for us to do this. I think you can see as you go through these slides, we've looked at a whole bunch of different issues. And I want to be clear too, it's the one tree that we're talking about. We do have mitigation measures for the other two. And if we look at those two trees, and I would love to walk there and have a look with you, and you can see the canopy. It's actually overcrowded significantly, that one tree. And if we look at urban forest strategies, planting plans, which I spent my weekend doing, and you look at spacing between those trees, you would never replant that tree where it is today. If that tree dies, you would not replant it in there for large spaced canopy trees in the boulevard. It's not recommended at all. So there's larger spacing requirements to that as well. So if we were to replant boulevard trees of that scale with that canopy, they would be spaced even a little bit further apart than the two more significant trees on that block, which were retained.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn to David.
Yeah, same topic and not obviously having the background of all the options and so forth. So bear with me. And trying to protect the existing building. Obviously, you've come back twice with the same result. So trying to protect that and also in consideration of the major issue here. And I understand too, besides that tree, there's some sensitivity to the cherry trees and the root implication on off-site trees.
Right.
So recognizing that, in your options, was it ever an option to use the side ramp down area as a drive aisle to access the parking in the back exactly locationally, eliminate the access to that from Fourth, take the ramp down, I'll say north of it, affecting only the one unit, maybe even leaving some space for a studio above it, and protecting the lower level. So you'd have access to the parking, have to reshuffle a few parking stalls, maybe lose one or two, protect down at the basement level for parking, have minimal impact on the design you've got now, and really only deal with the implication of, and eliminate the issues of the trees, all of them.
Yeah, great question and great point. And I'll start with, I think, the first question, which is the cherry trees that are next door. Number one, we had a arborist look at those trees in detail and speak to council on them. They're fairly minor in diameter, like quite small trees. Cherry trees also, which I've learned through this process, are very resilient. So they actually, forget which city or municipality it is, it'll come to me, but they did road work around cherry trees, similar. They were a little bit larger than these ones, but similar in scale, and provided some feedback on that they're extremely resilient, one, to that type of excavation work that we're proposing in that area. And two, those trees are of such a small diameter that they would be easily replaced if they were to die or not make it, which we would be happy to bond to. In terms of your question of flipping the flipping the parking to Fourth Street or the entrance onto Fourth Street because of the way that the site is designed, that L shape. It's hard to get that surface parking in that same location because we would have to have a driveway come in. So it's inefficient that way. And then on top of it, the geodetic level along Third Street is actually lower than Fourth Street.
Mm-hmm.
So we're able to enter that parkade without it being as steep through that area. So short answer to your question, yes, we've looked at all of those
I just to clarify.
Yeah.
The access to the parkade would still be from Third. The
Flipping
access,
it to the other side of the,
yeah, just flip it right above.
Like shift the driveway
Shift
just a
the-
little bit to the north, so that'd be kind of two driveways beside each other, one to the surface and one down.
Yeah, well, no. The access, yeah, basically where you've got the access to the parkade now, that becomes a drive aisle that you can ramp or slope and go around the rear area into that parking lot. And then your ramp down is just at that same point of intersecting and does affect that one unit. And that's the only impact. I mean, somewhat tongue in cheek, it's the only impact on your overall design, except for that it eliminates your access from Fourth and allows you to come in, drive aisle, looks, maybe marginally, but still 2-lane traffic. You've got the site area at the back. You could come around and access your parking lot at the back. And retain the parking the way you have it, basically in numbers, let's say, for the most part.
we may have looked at that. I'm wondering if, just for clarity, are you able to point out on the screen just kind of what you mean, so we're not.
Do we have a pointer?
Think about mine.
All right. Okay.
It's about experience.
Yeah, perfect. That's what I need.
This
Yes.
goes here. This becomes your access point, public access, whatever. Down here comes in this area and into your parking. No access there at all. Whatever needs to get reshuffled internally to the site happens. With this sitting there, look to me about studio size still left. So you could maybe pick a studio that you've got in numbers and accommodate a larger unit somewhere else because you've lost this.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the next level down, or the next level up in this case, it seemed to work on the part. I mean, just from a simplistic review.
I think the short answer is we've looked at a lot of different options for parking. We wouldn't be able to have two driveways side by side going to a property line. That engineering would not permit that, and there's hazards you would get with people coming at the same time.
So they thought if it were to shift up here with this between, and there was a unit here, the studio to separate.
I think the other part of that is like when we get to that corner. This is just me looking at it at a really high level. When we get to that back corner, unless we shifted the building all the way forward or lost the whole block of homes, I'm not sure that we would get garbage truck, fire truck circulation through that area. It's really, really tight. Head height becomes a concern in terms of ramp going down into that. So it's not as though you just lose one studio. You end up with, again, back to the idea, we could probably build anything. You could certainly build your.
No, I was thinking the cost
idea.
too. I've seen a similar on across from Tallista Park. There's a new 3-story, I think, development. And conceptually done exactly the same thing. And they're directly beside each other. Basically, your single curb cut, you go around on the right-hand side, drive aisle into the back, and then their parkade access under the building at that corner goes straight down. So that was kind of a reference point when I was looking at it, and they said, well, maybe, might be and I wondered if you'd looked at that option because it would maybe if it were possible, overcome the disparity of concerns that both parties have, cost wise and impact wise, plus the impact on the trees.
It's worth noting that there are existing flowering plum trees going up Third. One of which is just north of where we have
Right.
the ramp coming out.
Mhm.
So if you do all of that work to reshuffle everything, you end up saving the cypress, but then you lose a farm on Third.
Mhm.
So yes,
I guess that's
people
a
will weigh the value of each tree
a
differently,
council
right? But
decision,
you're trading
maybe.
a tree.
yeah.
And you still lose homes in that scenario. I don't know how we would
Yeah.
get our head height through there. It's difficult. I appreciate the.
Yeah,
but
no, I just,
Hey, Todd, do you want to go next?
Yeah, okay, so like, first off, I love the overall design and everything. Realistically, your proposal for the trees and stuff seems reasonable, but that being said, so, yeah, was there any consideration given towards having parking all along the north lot line and pushing the building towards the south lot line? And it seems to me you're about 5,000 square feet short of the maximum that you could build. Size of?
That's that one. With the whole.
So we've got dozens of these, but if you like, you could fit, I think, 22 to 24 all the way across. If there was if you had a single if you had a driveway for the surface parking on both third and fourth. So much. So basically, if you were to go all the way across, you're facing. Yeah. So if you were to have like a monodirectional sort of drive-in, and so the drive-out was hugging the property line, so that you could have cars parked all along here, you could gain a number of spots there, and if you increased, brought this up even further, and if you were to add, you could probably bring this back a bit, you'd be adding a bunch of corners, which add costs and whatnot. But it seems to me that you could probably exceed the amount of parking you have, and with the additional building space, add like 10% more units.
We haven't been able to come up with a scenario.
So can I just
that
tap you for a minute? You need to share that up on the screen here.
Yeah,
So
I would
everybody
love
else can.
Is it
And try not to have these little,
to make it feasible, you need more units. And like for every bedroom unit you have, it seems you could fit 3 studios. I don't know where you're between a studio, a 1 bedroom, a 2 bedroom, a 3 bedroom, what square footage makes the most money.
in terms of, well, we want to have a variety of housing too.
Yeah.
Like if we were just to provide studios on an economic standpoint, if we were looking at it from just on a pro forma basis,
Yeah.
you would say, oh, why don't you just build studios all day long every day?
Yeah.
But that's not what everyone wants.
No,
I'm
obviously.
trying to provide.
And if you're increasing housing, you'd have to add probably 1 adaptable unit and 1 3-bedroom to get your minimum to increase the numbers. But it seems to me that by pushing, without having to go all the way into the root zone, but by maximizing without touching the root zone, your underground parking, there's a bunch of spots to be gained. Maybe not having it all underground, but then if you had a drive out across the north, you could also push the building to over a bit. And really, it would be a matter of there might have to be a few inlets and notches so that every bedroom could have a window. But it seems that there's room to increase the number of units, which would then make it even more feasible.
Yeah, when we go through those options again, and like I said, we have looked at a lot of options.
Yeah.
And we're not
I just-
trying to
I just didn't see that one.
Yeah, and that particular one. So keep in mind where our building sits right now.
Yeah.
We're basically at the closest corner that we can go to from that critical root zone. So if we shift this building over, we start encroaching on that critical root zone.
Yeah, it would have
this-
to be
for the
pushed
larger tree.
Yeah.
So then when you start looking at form, and then one of the comments that came back is, why don't you build a W-shaped building?
Yeah.
And we go, okay, we could do that.
Yeah.
Like that is possible, but we don't want to charge people $10,000 a month.
No,
rent.
it only makes sense if you can increase units.
Yes, if we can increase units and then we go to density. So we feel like the density and the parking ratio for this site is adequate. I think we have looked at a lot of different options and we've beaten a lot of those options to death. And I appreciate the feedback that we're receiving today. It's not, again, that we're trying to be extremely difficult. It is that there is one moderately healthy tree. Again, that wouldn't be planted today under boulevard standards in that area. If we walked over there and looked at it, you would see that the canopy of those other two large trees are basically touching. There's not a lot of canopy, and that seems to be the main concern when I read through the urban forest strategy for Sydney is tree canopy. Yeah. And to Chris's point, he went through an exercise. We're actually increasing the tree canopy over time on this particular site plan, and I think that's being missed a little bit. So to pull that tree out, and Chris, maybe you can speak to this. It's very, very minimal in terms of what it does for tree canopy.
Yeah, basically because a significant portion of the cypress that we're talking about removing already falls under the canopy of the larger cypress that's directly beside it. There's a significant amount of overlap. Probably about 75% of the canopy of the removed cypress is not actual canopy loss for the site because it's all already under canopy. So then when we're looking at canopy numbers with takeoffs, obviously when we're putting in new trees, they're going in smaller, but looking at, for instance, a 10-year takeoff, if you're starting at a baseline of about 680 square meters of canopy coverage, current state, at a 10-year, you're at 815, and at a 20-year, you're at 960. So you're going, from about an 18% canopy coverage on the site. After 10 years, you're already over 21%, and then at 20 years, which is not even at maturity, but you're getting closer to it, you're at 25% coverage. So we're doing a lot to mitigate. Also, with currently the way that the trees are located on the site, they're call it inefficiently located as far as their environmental, sort of ecological and habitat impact. Clusters and then big spaces around, no corridors, no small flights from tree canopy to tree canopy, and nothing crossing from fourth to third. So what we've tried to do in our landscape plan is provide along the north side a pretty good run of tree canopy with just short flights in between. So small birds can easily make that jump without getting, they tend not to want to go longer, just so that they don't, expose themselves when they're feeding, that kind of thing. And their nesting practices, that all kind of goes into it. So we've created a bit of a canopy corridor along the north side, and then we've created sort of north-south running lines of canopy along the two frontages as well. And then on the south side, with the cherry trees being small enough for the impact to be mitigated during construction, those will also be able to mature to create kind of like a run leading into the site as well. So really, as far as this kind of project goes, as far as the tree canopy is concerned, it's I would say above average for sure. The other big thing to note as well about it is that the trees are located off slab. So not only are they getting more soil available to them, but when, 50 years down the road, parkade waterproofing needs to get repaired or anything like that, you're not lifting trees, well, effectively like getting rid of them because no one actually keeps them when they do that. But you're not getting rid of those trees, removing all that habitat, the mature size and everything, and then replanting. They don't need to be moved. So they're like a permanent fixture on the site. And all of that is the trade-off for the removal essentially of this one tree that's basically sitting underneath another bigger tree.
Okay, thanks. I've got some commission members that haven't had a chance to speak yet. So is there any more? JD?
Oh, I'll start with some things I like. Just generally, the design looks nice. I appreciate that you kept it similar to the ones in the north and south, taking some design aspects of those. I love all the sustainable building features. The bike repair station is a nice feature to have. Originally, when I was looking at this, I had some similar ideas to David about the idea of could you move the parkade driveway up the ramp. Originally, I was thinking somewhere further up, like I think it's a one-bedroom unit just north of the main entrance on Third. I thought that could potentially be an option for the ramp, but then again, I don't like the idea of taking away the housing just for a ramp, especially when the proponent was saying that 75 is their calculated minimum they need to be financially feasible. In terms of the parking in general and the 1-to-1 ratio of units to spaces. The impression I get is that they seem to think that it's not going to be accepted by the community that having less than one space per unit. But when I look at other nearby properties, I got some stats from Allison here. It's Sydney staff. We've got, for example, 9864 Fourth. They've got 37 units, but only 28 spaces, which works out to 0.76 per unit. And then there's 9834th. It's a mixed-use building that required 74 spaces, and only 30 were built. So there's other buildings around in this neighborhood, within a few blocks, more or less, that already have less spaces. So I think something that I haven't really seen considered is the idea of just keep the underground parking more or less as it is and eliminate the surface parking entirely. Because as far as I can tell, these issues with the trees are more about keeping the parking. It's not so much impacting the actual housing we're going to get. So that's something that I'd like to see.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. Last two.
Yeah. So, overall, I'm just gonna say that I like the design overall. I think they've done a good job of bringing in units to the site. And I'm gonna agree with Jamie on the part of the parking. I mean, to a large extent, this is a problem kind of created by the town of Sydney by having a minimum parking bylaw in the first place. And it would have been interesting to see High Street's proposal if the minimum parking requirements hadn't been there in the first place. What would they have proposed? And so that I think is really the crux of the issue, that we're spending all this time arguing about whether to have a tree saved or not because of the parking bylaw. And yeah, I would agree that we should just probably either get rid of those 19 spots and call it a day. Yeah, so yeah, I'll leave that comment there.
Sorry, David?
Yeah, this is my first sort of meeting with any, chance to look at something. I wasn't on the APC before, so I also spent a bit of a weekend learning about things. Yes, I've been out. I looked at the complete neighborhood. I thought about the OCP. I was actually on the OCP review committee, so I sort of have some concept. I like the idea. I like the look. What's in there? I have no problems with 4 stories. I like some of the shading that will come from your diagram there, your balconies and so on. I think that went well. There's a couple of points. Staff did an excellent job, by the way, in my opinion, of the report, and particularly picking up a couple of the items on cycling. I am a cyclist, and those things are important. In terms of moving the complete building, or I was in the council meeting when you made the presentation to council, and you showed all those variations that you went through. I'm not an architect, and I'm not going to argue with somebody else there, and I'm sure that we've got great planners in the town, and if they could have picked up something that would have said, "Hey, let's move this whole thing, a little bit." So I leave that bit as was. In terms of parking, mixed feelings on that. Although I'm probably disagreeing and agreeing with my colleagues here. If I look at the town of Sydney, and I went to StatsCan and picked up a few numbers there. About 80% of all households in Sydney have a vehicle. If you look at renters versus owners, you can't get that directly from StatsCan, but you can certainly make some statistical deductions out of that. And you've got an age demographic in there and the rest of it. Because I heard when you made the presentation to council that people who rent here expect to have a parking space. All right. So again, left shoulder, right shoulder. All right. If I was renting, I would want a parking space. But if I do crunched a few numbers, and these are estimate numbers because there aren't specific there, you look at it and say about 65 to 70% of renters in Sydney, given that demographic and comparing it with elsewhere in the province, renters would have vehicles, much less than owners. So I just pass that on to you. But so you look at that. Then the other shoulder says, hang on, as a cyclist and a member of the community, the biggest thing we hear yelling about is parking. And who's to say that one parking spot, is going to be enough? Because people have a habit of having two cars and then they park the other one on the street. And as a cyclist, those are death traps because of dooring and everything else, second only to four-way stops. So you look at that and say, well, okay, parking, you could eliminate a couple of bits of parking, maybe 1-2 stalls as was suggested. And I think economically, I would suggest that might be an answer, all right, and still stay within sort of thing. I then shifted over and I looked at these trees. And I physically went and looked at the trees, quite a bit actually. I did a bit of research as to how they plant these things down in Monterey, a place that I've been and seen these things. These are jump trees that people plant, in order to provide windbreaks and screens and the rest of it. There is a spacing. I think that was alluded to. That would be good. And these things, they're cramped together, really cramped together. That's a scruffy looking tree in the middle. All right, it really is. I did appreciate the comment from staff where it says staff believe the proposed approaches for driveway construction could work to improve the survival of the remaining trees. But I have to accept, and I fully understand staff's position, you've got a tree bylaw, and that's it. Okay, that you looked at from that perspective. So I thought, all right, it then drops to council to decide whether this is a good move to actually eliminate this middle tree. From my perspective, or just from what I've read, the risks essentially would be from windage. Is what I've read. Again, I'm not the expert, but because you've got 3 interlocked trees and you take out the middle one and the other one, not so much from roots. But then I think, well, hang on a minute, somebody's going to build a big 4-story building right in front of them. You're not going to get a lot of windage. So I looked at, what again was suggested in terms of survivability, and it should be fairly high. And I think, okay, then I looked at what was suggested in terms of root protection to go through, because I heard that. And that, of course, becomes really interesting as to where we go. And I understand from staff's perspective, there isn't any consideration of a root protection scheme in the bylaw. So, we can't go from that point of view. But if I look through it, and I said, well, what do other people? Well, Vancouver, Victoria, I mean, I could list a whole slew of places that do allow this protection system. And in fact, places, recommend it in some cities, both on the Pacific, particularly on the Pacific Northwest, but also Edmonton, Calgary, etc., where they go through and they use this protection system. Then with success and with a sort of 80% survivability rating and so on. It's not new and it's not unproven. Then my other little shoulder says, well, hang on, I've been in this town for 20 years and I've been a fairly decent looker at developments. And too many times, yeah, sure, we're going to protect the tree. But then when we get into it and we start digging, I'm sorry, but we lost the tree. Yeah, that happens. All right. And it's I could list 2 or 3 where that goes. So then I start thinking, well, yeah, and I saw the proposal that you came up with, which is, and the proposal from the arborist, which is good, even when I read through. Forgive me if you wrote it or something like that. I think you got to think that it might have been good for cars, but you're going to run dump trucks over this. You're going to have moving trucks. You're going to have all the rest of the thing. There are national standards to which this should be built if you're doing it, and other municipalities and cities reference those particular modules. They reference the particular sizing, the materials to be used, everything else in order to achieve that success. So I come down to the fact that, okay, on one side, maybe it's a question of parking and losing a parking spot or two. That has pluses and minuses. And the other side is, if this tree was going to go, I like the idea of and that helps this development being built. We've then got more housing in Sydney, and we eventually end up not too far down the road with a better tree canopy. And right now, Sydney's tree canopy is shrinking. So anything we got less than we did when we started off to develop. So I think it comes down to making it clear it is a council decision. But the input I would give would be either think about a couple of parking spots, and can you and just a couple parking spots because of that requirement for parking, or a really tight specification for taking out the third tree and what you go through in order to put in a really solid specification for how that goes through. So, as I say, the three things: moving the buildings, I'm not thinking about. The parking thing, if that will do it, and you lose a couple of parking spots and keep the trees, fine. I think that third tree is going to die anyway. If you just look at it, it's not going anywhere. And if you do move that third tree, yes, a tight specification, which is proven in many places. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go and then I'm going to turn it for a second time with folks. I actually have a bunch of questions that have not to do with the driveway trees. So actually a question to staff if I could. So can you get the site plan back up to me now? So was there a discussion with the applicant about overlook on the north side to those adjacent buildings?
There was a bit of discussion about overlook. There's also some discussion around shading as well on the properties. The applicant did provide a shadow study to help that discussion. I don't know if it's here. It's on purpose.
Yeah, just from being on site and that building to the north, whatever, and I understand why, but its major windows are facing are on the south side of that building. So there's going to be a major interface between the north side of this building and those folks. So, and I know we've discussed this on other projects. The one by the elementary school comes to mind. We looked at doing something with opaque balconies or something like that. So I'm going to leave that comment out there maybe for later. The next question I had is back to the applicant. So is the surface parking for that matter all the parking unhooked from the units?
Yes, so the way that, can I speak to parking kind of in general as well? Thank you, gentlemen, for your comments on parking, and if there weren't a parking bylaw, what would we be parking the building to? So we do have a lot of experience and stats there. So we manage over 1,500 homes. So we have a lot of rental data from people and how we manage. This is about as low as we would want to go. So we have a standard that we like to meet. And in this building, we would actually be parking it from our own standard, probably around 1.35 parking ratio versus the 1. But understanding that that we're tight constraints, that it's a very walkable place in Sydney, and especially given the location that it's at, we're more comfortable with having a reduced parking count. It's also something that we look at when we're financing buildings. Again, back to tying parking to a home, is banks do look at that when we're looking at it. So we look at it for what our tenants actually want in that space. And generally speaking, around that 1.3 range, we feel pretty comfortable depending on the unit mix. So, 3 bedrooms will do 1.5, and for a studio suite, we would do. So we would actually be higher here than where we're at. So it's not as easy as just removing it, because it's also, I believe, a lot of the angst that's coming around on the street, to David's point, considering the health of the tree that's there, is from, from people's concerns about removing the tree from the area. I believe that APC would hear a lot more if we were to remove 19 parking stuff from the building versus this one particular tree. That's my feeling.
But just so I'm clear, the 3 bedrooms would likely rent 2 parking spaces, and the studios could quite conceivably not rent any parking spaces.
Right.
And that's not unusual.
Right. Yeah, we decouple it,
Yeah.
so when people come in,
They can
and then
pick
the
and
property
choose.
manager.
Yeah. Okay. Can I get the 4th Street elevation? So when I look at the buildings, and there is a streetscape, I don't know if it's in this package.
Yeah, we have a pretty rendering.
That one.
Conceptually.
That one. So, yeah, that one. So when I look at the 4th Street elevation, I'm a little concerned in relative to the OCP guidelines about how it fits in with the other 2 buildings, which, have a pretty good street presence. On this one, I don't mean to be unkind, but you're sort of looking at the end of the building.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a concern for me in terms of how it would fit with that streetscape. The other question and comment I had, sorry to flip you around, Selena, but can we go to the landscape plan? So if there's gonna be 2s and 3s in here, correct? With children. Most likely.
Sure. Yeah.
But no playground. And the nearest park is miles away. So I'm a little, and I know there's rooftop amenities, which is fine. But the fact that there's nowhere for the kids to hang out, I know where they're gonna be doing, they're gonna be playing road hockey in that surface parking space. So that is a bit of a concern, and it is something that's mentioned in the OCP as something that's desirable, that you have suitable players. And sorry, I'm kind of bumping all over the place here. I'm going to try to save the driveway thing to the end. But for the rooftop amenities, because on the plans, it doesn't show fixtures. So will there be a provision for how those will be programmed? Will there be any way to secure the fact that, that perhaps you're thinking of seating, there's a barbecue, there's I don't know, whatever, other things as opposed to just a blank space and you're on your own?
Oh, yeah, great question. So we do these, a lot of the projects that we do are quite a bit larger, and the amenity spaces that we create and we build are actually in a standalone independent building. So we have lots of examples of doing this exact thing, and it's actually a programming. It's a programming that we go through with communities, which is our property management group, and we outfit those spaces for exactly that. So they're outfit with barbecues and seating, and properly managed through that. So the short answer to your question is yes. Do we have that fully detailed in the plan right now? Right.
So back to staff with that, is that something to be secured through the DP at all? Or not normally.
We've seen it secured previously. Sometimes it's looked at as part of the landscape deposit.
If it's built in, excuse me, if it's built into the patio with like installed planters, installed seating. We would want to see that as part of the landscape plan, so it could be taken as part of the landscape deposit before a building permit is issued. If it's movable seating and barbecues, that's not installed, so we wouldn't take a deposit. So we would expect more detail as your plans evolve.
Yep.
And then try to delay this to the end, but everybody else is taking a kick at this, so I feel like so can we go to the landscape plan? So a couple of things on this. One is reiterate David's comment about, and I go back to the rendering you had. In the event that that middle tree gets removed, that is going to be the only access for big trucks, moving trucks, garbage, recycling, all the rest of it. They're going to be knocking those branches off. And if I'm not an expert on those bridging mechanisms, but if they can't handle a truck, those roots will be crushed. And we're going to be looking at pulling all the trees out, and none of us are going to want that. That's going to be an awkward day if that happens. So I'm a little bit worried about how that will actually happen, which brings me to my last thing, and I resist nothing more than somebody trying to redesign the building for you. But I'm just going to pose this as a question, not a solution. Did you look at the possibility of shifting that surface parking driveway to the north on the other side of that third tree? It would mean obviously some reconfiguration to the end of that building, which I would like to see anyhow to improve the streetscape. It would possibly require the variance for some parking. But my question is, did in all the permutations, that one that you looked at?
Yes.
I thought so.
Multiple different ways.
And the answer to why not is?
Multiple different answers to the question. To why not, but I think what you're mentioning is somewhat similar to Todd's comment in terms of moving that building over. Where we are right now and the shape of the building, the driveway comes in, we're close to the critical root zone as the building sits right now. So you can't just shift the building over for that. So maybe you'd have to point it out to me because I'm not.
My question is those two end units facing Forest Street.
Yeah.
Could they be reconfigured to do two things? One is to improve the streetscape, as I mentioned earlier, and also to put it roughly, to give enough, cheat those over somehow, means changing the unit mix at the end, moving that wall, that south wall of that unit up enough so you can allow the driveway to get past that. So you don't lose any doors. It means a reconfiguration of those two units at the end. And a variance for a couple of parking spaces, I think.
Yes, the short answer to that question also was something that was brought up. So now I'm following. I believe what you're suggesting is that the driveway access comes in. Correct. Yes. So we looked at that extensively. There's multiple things that are happening there. We looked at, could we do a cantilever? And the answer to that is yes. Could we put a driveway there and shift the unit count? The question there potentially is yes. You also lose parking as you come in for that access. Turning radius becomes difficult for vehicles. The stacking of the structure of the building goes away because now you have to think of what's below, not just above, as you shift. So you're losing parking spaces below, above. Turning radius becomes a problem, and parking in that area. It was something you mentioned that was interesting. I'm not sure if I was understanding it correctly, but in terms of coming in, larger trucks coming in and the tree canopy, we worried about tree branches being.
You can knock those branches off.
The nice thing right now is there's minimal pruning that's required, and our arborist actually went through that and presented that to council because they're quite high right now. So he mentioned that there's actually minimal, and David, when you went and looked at the site, you probably noticed this, because that middle tree is competing in that area, the branches from the other large trees are not actually connecting through that area. There's no canopy in there right now. So it's actually very minimal pruning above. David, I was curious if the arborist report you read was the Tomahawk report or the Diamond Head report? Okay. And when you looked at the design that was in the Diamond Head, you felt that it was still lacking potentially.
I think it's a question of detail.
Okay.
All right. I think, certainly it refers, for example, to asphalt. No way.
Oh, no, actually,
No.
it says permeable.
Permeable slab.
Which refers to, in that particular area, this would be permeable pavers.
Yeah, and that's not, it actually, well, we can go back and have a look. But typically, for example, depending on the loading, if you're gonna go with garbage trucks, I pulled up, yes, you've got minimum 150 to 200 millimeter aggregate base. You can go, there are different specs for where you go. And what my point was that if you were going to go that way, it should be tightened up, all right, significantly, and that it should be a specification that is approved, for example, by the town's arborist, and then monitored that it goes with that. But it's very different, for example, as to whether you're doing it for cars, for light loads, and for heavier loads, as to what you can put in, the framework, the rest of it. Fairly easily done. The two arborist reports, both were very, very good. One focused more on the overall site and administration of the overall site, and the second one was definitely focused on the middle tree. No, I'm not an arborist, right? I simply compared the two, looked through them, and no great problem. But as I say, it's a concern that unless you have a really tight spec, of engineering background, somebody will wobble, right? And we see wobbles.
So last thing I just wanted to mention before we turn it for second time around, and I'll defer to your landscape architect, who certainly has more expertise than I do. But members of the public have been quite concerned, obviously, about those cherry trees and the potential impact of that underground ramp. And I know this, so is it possible you could cheat that ramp over a foot or two to give those cherry trees a little bit breathing room? I recognize the impact of that on those units, but I think the more breathing room, and I stand to be educated here, but the more breathing room you can give those roots, those cherry trees, the better. And as Councillor Duck has pointed out, that's something that council has asked us to take a look at, as well as the cypress tree. So,
Rob, so you just mentioned that that's something we can look
We
at.
can.
yeah,
I think there's a tightening in the parquet that could get us another half meter.
I think I defer to your experts, but I'm thinking whatever you can give those roots. the better.
Yeah, I mean, the more space you give away from the trunk, the better.
Yeah.
So certainly we are close to the trunk, and they are going to be resilient because they're younger and smaller, but an extra 500 mils is certainly going to be helpful.
Okay, I think that would be helpful. Okay, that's it for my comments. Anybody want to go second time? David?
Just a question, separate from trees. Is it going to be a sprinkler building?
Yeah.
Fully sprinklered?
That's the BC building code is going to address that decision. Nothing to do with us. We don't get to make that one. Code. But the answer, short answer.
Okay.
Kelly?
I just want to say that I agree just about 100% with David's comments. The only area that I might look at a consideration is I'd hate to lose that surface parking stalls instead of this is the other shoulder you were talking about. I've looked at that middle tree. It's marginal at best. The canopy is covering the outside two trees are covering that tree. I think I buy the argument that the applicant has put forward that the planting of 17 trees on site is going to improve the canopy in a very short period of time. So I guess I just want to say I'm supportive of option 2 in the recommendation in the options.
Okay, we're gonna get to that in a second. Okay, anybody else Oh, we got Todd, then Jamie.
Are we in the, are we the round two now?
Round two.
Okay, I'll put out, maybe not round two.
So, I mean, overall, I still think there's probably a little bit of minutes on this without affecting the trees. But if the numbers with that still don't work, I think basically the design you've got is probably the best case scenario. If there isn't another option to make the numbers work. The cherry trees, in my opinion, were somewhat irresponsibly planted close to the property line, to the south. They should have been a bit more room than they planted traditionally, but now they're there, so it kind of is what it is. But I've tried to kill cherry trees. Even if it's cut them off, they just grow back. Like it's so I feel like they would probably do okay, and I would agree that that center cypress is, it's looking a little rough, and once it's gone, with little small branches being, I don't think there's going to be maximum road heights 13.6. I think you could drive it up there less than there. Once that's something that's not a big issue. So, yeah, that's my opinion.
Jamie, then Aaron.
Yeah, so a few things. When I agree with Dennis about the playground idea. That was actually not just the tree issue with the surface lot, but the idea of making more of a pedestrian courtyard, some more gardens, and a play area for children as well, especially considering all the family size 3-bedroom unit. I guess the question to the developer is that so you said with your experience you found the one space per unit is about the minimum you'd like to go. Have you found that experience through actually attempting less before and having it not work out, or is it just from kind of asking people what their preferences are, that sort of thing?
It's the demand side that we see on managing again over 1,500 homes in different communities.
Right.
So depending on the bylaw, like one that as an example that we had to push to increase, which seems a little wild, is Calgary. So Calgary's bylaw, when you work there, they actually have a minimum. We had to get a variance to increase the amount of parking allowable, and that was more from the demand side of the building. So we do look at that definitely holistically. This would be the lowest parking ratio that we have across the portfolio of properties. So it's definitely tighter than that, and we find that people generally still, as much as we want to have excellent transportation, we're not quite there yet. But for Sydney, I mean, I love coming here because of its walkability. So I think it already has those things going for it that allow for a little bit of a tighter parking ratio and excellent street parking most of the time, very calm, especially after 5 p.m. I've noticed when I've been in town, there's plenty of parking past 5 p.m. On streets and off streets, but the biggest demand in that area for the on-street parking appears to be from the marina. Like people park when they go down in that area. So I think the trade-off between that center tree and having the 19 spots is well worth it.
Part of why I asked is because the stats I got from the other nearby properties that it shows that they've got less than one per unit. They like the condos, looking those up on realtor.ca, I'm only one of the 3 properties that actually have any vacancies, and they only have 3 vacancies. So as far as I can tell, they seem to be doing just fine, even though they've got less parking than the 1 per unit.
Oh, and Jamie, I think you're probably correct there. Yeah. What we're trying to avoid is nuisance on the street. So while they very likely are being rented, they may cause frustration for other people that are using that space for parking in the building. I'm not saying that that's the case, but that would be the concern I would have. Right. We build this building and we get frustration.
Right. That is something I've heard a lot from generally opinions around town. In my experience, if you go to Sydney late at night, like after all the businesses have closed, for the most part, the streets are a lot quieter. I find it's not so much the actual residential parking that's filling up the streets, it's workers, it's customers going to the businesses, especially when you're within a few blocks of downtown. So I'm not personally that concerned about the effects of a property with less parking on the on-street parking. Though I do think it'd be nice to have
some sort of designated like loading or accessible parking near the entrances. That's something that you could use for say garbage trucks and things like that, if that was an option. Let's see. So I had a couple of comments about the sort of the accessibility of it. I think it might be getting a little bit potentially outside the scope of APC, but I just noticed that a lot of the ground floor units, they have stairs up to the patios, like a few steps. And I feel like it'd be nice if there was ramps up to the patios, especially since the ground floor units are more likely to be the adaptable ones. Giving people full access to not have to go through the main entrance to their unit. If they wanted to, they can come and go at the patio. If they're in a wheelchair, dispatches, or what have you. And then the bicycle parking, I had a couple concerns. I'm not a big fan of the short-term outdoor parking being sort of tucked away or hidden around the corner of the building. My experience as a cyclist, that if you hide the parking like that, people don't know it's there. Like if you ever go to, say, Small Gods Brewery in Sydney, you'll see the cyclists have walked up to the trees, the poles, and they don't even actually know that there's a bike rack hidden around the corner of the building. And so that's something that I feel like visitors to this place and like people delivering by bicycle, that sort of thing, they're going to need to be able to find this bike parking. So if this was the only spot it could be, I'd like to see wayfinding to it. But if possible, it'd be nice to have it somewhere within, say, 10 meters of the main entrances. Even if it's like splitting the racks between 4th and 3rd Street entrances, which was actually another one of my concerns, is the fact that you can only access the current racks from 4th Street. Oh, and another comment on the idea of the deliveries going into the surface lot. So I know Canada Post probably would understand where the mailroom is, and they would probably know to go that way. But the majority of the deliveries, like say Amazon and FedEx, Uber Eats, DoorDash, that kind of thing, if the address of the building says 3rd Street, they're going to go to the 3rd Street entrance. And so I think that's where we're going to see, unless there's a designated loading zone there, people are going to be double parking, making kind of a awkward situation on that side of the street. And I'm not so concerned about them going into the backside. Yeah, I think that was most of it from me. One other minor thing I'll add is this is a personal preference. I'd like to see that public, the walkway on the north side. I'd like that to be public, just to match with the OCP and active transportation plan of like increasing walkability in Sydney. And I know that the Henry Street is not that far away, but figure that this is a pathway that already exists. It's going to be there. The only difference is whether or not the gate's locked. And the proponent did mention at one of their meetings with the town, September 2nd, I believe, the council committee of the whole, the applicant said that while it's primarily intended for private use, they could leave the gates unlocked. So it seems to me that they're open to that idea. Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah. Well, if you guys from a corporate standpoint, feel as though you need to go to 1-to-1 parking ratio or potentially even higher, then I guess the Monterey Cypress is going to have to be sacrificed. And but I would agree with David, some sort of measures of underneath that drive aisle be undertaken to ensure that there's some sort of a soil connection between the two remaining cypress trees, if possible. And so, yeah, guys, I don't know. I think it'll be fine. I would also agree that having some sort of accessible or not accessible, maybe like a staple bike rack somewhere on the 3rd Street entrance, near where the front entrance is, as well as one closer to the back 4th Street entrance would be desirable, so that those aren't being washed up to trees or signs. Yeah, that's it for me.
Okay.
Right. David?
Do we have a third time around? Just to cover, I was covering.
So appreciate your presentation today and the thought you put into this. I also like the recommendation and the report from staff. We haven't talked about, but I do like the restricted covenant for age-based future ownership and the scheduling for water management system. I think we're agreed with those. I like the RM6R to RM7 discussion because I think we're talking about housing and making density a real vision for Sydney. APC didn't create the tree preservation bylaw, but we have it. And it's because I support these kinds of this development that I don't think I could justify taking the tree out for parking. I know it sounds contradictory, but for the public, for our community to embrace development, I think we have to show how this can work. I think we have to figure a way, if we're going to have a tree prevention bylaw, we have one. And we want development. And so I'm really supportive of it. But I think that we'll be losing community support for development if we keep moving the line on our own bylaws, particularly on tree preservation. So I think in the future projects of these will get higher criticism. So I want to identify where I have some reservations with this.
Can I speak to that? Is that okay? So something that I tried to communicate, maybe didn't do a good job of, is the tree preservation bylaw allows for these scenarios, and that's what's being used and has been used over the last year without controversy on lots of projects. So there is a replanting program that's allowed within the tree preservation bylaw. So it's not necessarily a first course of action, but it clearly states in there that that's an option. It's an option that's being used and doesn't always have to come to council or to APC in those scenarios. But there were last year, I think 56 trees removed. Some of them had gone to council, some hadn't gone to council. But it is happening. It does happen on a regular basis. So it is allowed within the tree preservation bylaw, and it's a replanting program. I think 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, and or a cash and lieu. So same for any trees that were damaged. So for option 2, what staff is recommending, which we're totally fine with, is putting up bonding, quite a large bond for the other trees from the area. So we are following the tree preservation bylaw. So we're not in contradiction there. It's not a first course of action necessarily that's taken, but it does comply.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
David, third time?
Last time. I think as all things in particular is happening these days, fortunately in some cases, unfortunately in others, there's always compromises that have to be viewed. Not everyone will be pleased with all the compromises. You try to mitigate what you can, come up with the best possible solution given the circumstances. This is obviously one of those cases, and I think the staff has done an excellent job in putting forward the interpretation of the bylaws and so forth, their feelings in certain things. There's observations in there beyond trees that I think are quite appropriate to consider. And I just was going to throw in my ancillary comments were the playground, I think, something like that. Entrances, the image of the entrances for me should be emphasized a little bit more. They get lost in the view that I see right now. Point. There'll be, I'm sure, signage and entrance directional things happening, but I find that a little weak visibly as it is now. I know it will change any case. Accessibility, as was mentioned, to the ground floor suites and so forth, should be considered very much for those, and there are quite a few in our community, both young and old, that require accessibility considerations and so forth. And I think there could be a little bit more thought, let's say, as it gets developed on that. And I also find, I think it was mentioned by staff, The upper level, particularly in the south side, can use additional shading.
David?
Thanks. I really appreciated the comments around the table, as they looked at. When I look at it, I think excellent comment from Jamie about the visibility of bike racks. Bikes that are hidden get stolen and damaged. So, that's not good. Although Sydney's a relatively reasonable place to live, it's not unknown. The playground thing, I'm not quite sure. Staff will tell me, but is that new park not literally across the road from this on 3rd Street?
There is a new park that was.
Discovery.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully something like that gets built within the lifetime of this building.
That would come later, like there'd have to be a park planning process and then a budget identified for any improvements. So right now, it's just kind of vacant grass.
I'm just thinking that the building hopefully will last 40 years, and maybe within 40 years we'll get a park across the street. In the meantime, I would encourage some sort of, playground or something on that. I think that's a particularly good one. And finally, yes, when you come down to it, I do like the idea of, an increased tree canopy over time, and maybe if that's the sacrifice. And finally, you're dead right about the cherry trees. All right, thank you. They are very important to the people of Sydney, and if we can do something to just give them, I do understand about trying to kill them, but nobody would believe it if they accidentally. Thank you.
If I could just capture some last words, this building, obviously, development has a lot of attention, partly because of the removal of the trees, but I think given the context of where this building is and the amount of attention it's going to probably generate, staff have made some suggestions around how to make some improvements to the design of the development. We've heard some comments from the Advisory Planning Commission about things that could also improve. So I would encourage that you sort of look at this more holistically, and that the adds will be more than the minuses. I guess is what I'm suggesting. And you've done a good job today of talking about some of the other things, but I think if you can show how you've responded to some of the comments from staff and some of the comments from the Planning Commission, hopefully that for council's point of view, they will see that as a net plus if the recommendation is to remove that one Cypress tree. So as I've said, that my main concern is that 4th Street elevation really needs some attention.
Thank you very much for this comment. And I'm absolutely happy to work on those details. It's getting past this large hurdle that will allow us to work on the details. So all the feedback we've received today is really helpful. Gerald, Chris, Robert here listening to everything as well. So certainly if we go forward with option 2, we'll be looking at all those.
And I recognize you got a performance to deal with, but I would suggest that I don't think there's anything that's been coming out of this meeting today that's going to be a deal breaker.
We're happy to look at all those options and see how we can improve.
Thank you very much. So with that, staff have actually provided 2 options for a motion. I'm going to turn to that now. And if somebody would like to make a motion for one of those options.
I would like to move the advisory option 2.
Would the chair like us to read that out for the recording and for the record? It's long.
I know, no, because there's going to be some amendments. So I think there's going to be a few amendments. So if it's okay with you, Allison, maybe what we'll do is we'll work through the amendments and vote on those. And then, is that okay, Ruth? Can you vote for you? And then we'll see what we end up with. And I'm going to try to spare you from having you recite the whole thing. I don't think it's necessary.
Telling a long story.
It is. It is.
Councillor Chair, may I make a suggestion that if you're looking at option 2, you work through them by number? If there's any changes or corrections or edits, amendments to those, do them by number, and if you had something to add at the end, then that's a little clearer relative to the presentation and everybody stays on the same page, so to speak.
Sure.
Also, if I could just clarify the process, that option 1 goes back to the applicant and then comes back to APC. Option 2, the feedback from APC goes back to council.
Correct.
And then the phone goes back to council.
Correct.
Thank you.
So at the moment, we have a motion regarding.
No, I appreciate that. I just want to make clarification.
We have a motion on. Or we do a second.
Correct. Correct. I'm just trying to.
Okay.
Yeah. There's going to be a lot of hands on this one. Okay. So Eric's made the motion for option 2. Can I get a seconder? David. Okay. So now, motion to amend, if anybody so chooses. And we can, to Councillor Duck's point, we can go through this one by one just so we can follow the dots. So number 1 is boilerplate. I think it's pretty straightforward. Number 2 is regarding the variances. I don't think you have anything to add to that. Number 3 again is pretty standard. Okay. Number 4. Anything to add to number 4? Which is the removal of cypress tree 951. Which relates to not removing until after the building permit. Do you want to make your amendment there, or I know where you're going? I think it's later.
I think it's later. Looking at that,
Yeah. 5, I think is pretty standard. Okay, now we're getting into the.
This number.
Oh yeah, that should be a
Yeah.
6. Yep. Okay, 6. Now we're into it. Good. Okay, so
It's your First Amendment. It's the number.
yeah. So staff have said in that recommendation regarding bicycle parking access, which I think Jamie has talked about, variation in hard servicing, emphasis on the main entrance, which I think David and others have talked about. I have some items out of this I'd like to add, but I'm going to open that up for discussion first. Amendments to number 6.
It's actually number 6. Well, it's 6B. Which begins install protection fencing around all on-site and off-site protected trees for the satisfaction of the town's arborists to remain in place until such time that all construction on the property is complete, and ensure that any necessary work inside the protection fencing be undertaken, and I'm going to amend here to add, in accordance with an implementation plan approved by the town's arborist and then under the direct supervision of a certified consulting arborist.
One more time.
So tree protection fencing be undertaken in accordance with an implementation plan approved by the town's arborist and under the direct.
So now I just make a friendly suggestion that perhaps that wording would be best suited under C. B is really about the fencing. I'm not disputing the wording, I'm just worrying.
No problem. If you want to move it to there, I would take that. Absolutely no problem.
Roof under C, same wording.
You did it? Yep, no problem. Okay. I just want to see it on there.
Anybody else? Put your hands up.
I'll second that.
Yeah, we should probably go amendment by amendment. Okay. So Eric, can you second that one?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment?
Just to be clear, understanding, because it was switched from D to C. So there's, B remains the same when we're addressing C right now. Right.
Yeah. So all those in favor of amending C? Okay, carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on, D, standard. E is from standard, so we're back to, 6A, which is where I've got some suggestions, and other commission members may have their own. Yeah, I'm gonna put out some suggestions for an amendment to 6A, is that it be amended to include 25.3.24, the Third Street streetscape, 25.4.14 overlook, 25.6.20 incorporate play area.
Sorry, 25.6.20.
Yeah, incorporate play area. And then wording in here, I'll leave it to you how to wordsmith, but there needs to capture shifting the ramp to the underground parking.
Yeah.
Or, and I'm not going to specify distance. We've had the conversation. Yeah.
Could I make a suggestion for how to word that one about shifting the ramp north
Right.
for the underground
Yeah.
parking? Instead of adding it as a design guideline to address under 6A, address design guidelines number XYZ,
Yeah.
make it a separate point, because these are all things to be done
Perfect.
as conditions of the DP. The property owner has to do all these things before issuance of a building permit. So we can just make it a new item, like a new item, what would it be? Item G or something.
Okay.
You can pop it down there or put it within, insert it within, but make it its own item.
Okay. You want to make it AI or would you want to make it G? Which do you prefer? Maybe AI and it stays together?
I would suggest you go, number 5 is what it is, number 6 is the new item that Allison's proposing, and then number 7 is number 6. Because you're substantially changing the building design. This can require, before any of the other things can be addressed before a building permit. So the building design has to be at that level that a building permit can be directed.
That works too. You could put it as number 5. A new number, and sorry, a new number 6.
Or
and
a
then
new number 6.
all of
And-
these things that are,
And everything shifts down one?
all these things become 7, 8,
Yeah,
C,
okay.
D.
Are you talking about shifting the driveway to give more room for the cherry tree roots, or to shift it like into the building?
No.
Just for the cherry tree roots.
The indication
like
like
2 feet.
like a foot or two.
Minimize that. Driveway.
Yeah.
That's all it takes, just to give those cherry trees.
Yeah.
a bit more. So we're gonna shift everything down, the number.
Just to point out, for the numbering in the report, just to point out, the driveway has to have a minimum width of 5.5 meters. We can't go any narrower than that. I don't know how narrow it is on the drawing, but it might result in the whole thing being pushed a bit, but it sounds like the architect has indicated that that's doable. So we'll work with the architect on that before the DP is registered,
Okay. So
if council approves.
Allison, so I'm clear there will be a new number 6 that incorporates shifting the ramp to the underground parking.
And that's the only, all the rest falls under numbers, the new numbers.
Right, okay. And also maybe under 6 also, there needs to be, I don't know if it's captured in your wording, David, but there needs to be bridging of that your driveway between trees.
I suggest you go back and finish off the new number 6, because the singular item. Before have a, that's an amendment.
The new number 6 just has a ramp to the underground.
Yeah.
It should be shifted slightly to the north.
So secondary.
Okay, so can I get a second to that one? Todd? Okay, all in favor? Carried, okay. Now the old 6, new 7. Contains a number of design guidelines. And I've suggested adding 25.3.24 Third Street streetscape, 25.4.14 overlook, 25.6.20 incorporating play area. Did I get a second? 25.4.14 overlay. Again, a seconder again that we'll photo for discussion. If I get a second to that,
I'll second it.
Eric, okay, David for discussion.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether it falls as part of that. I don't think it should be separate. It could go back to previous one where it's the listing of elements from the staff under 4A, but it's related to the comment that I had about the shading for the upper level. That was something I think was picked up by staff.
Yeah, Selena, was that not in?
It's not
Are
in
your
4A.
recommendation?
It was, which is repeated in 4A with that not there. I just wondered if that gets missed or whether it's inferred.
So where was it before?
Well, if you look at 4A, that seems to be replicating items that the staff have picked up.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And they did, I think, have a comment in their comments about you know, the south elevation.
You'd like to see that specified in there.
Well, I guess my question is if it can, maybe that's the place for it.
I believe that was 24.49.
So that should go there, should it? Yeah, okay.
Okay, so add that one,
To 4A.
well, which is now 6A
6.
or 7A.
All right.
Okay, so
If we could.
we have 25.3.24, 25.4.14, 25.6.20. Okay, Ruth? And then Selena, the friendly amendment is which? For the
4.4.9.
How about would the word be after the numbers? Like what's the purpose?
shading?
Shading of windows?
Yeah.
Shading.
Shading, I think is your terminology for this north, south elevation, sorry.
Okay, so can I get a seconder on the amendment? David, okay. All in favor? All in favor? Opposed?
Well,
You-
can you,
you-
can I ask a question? So, was part of that, excuse me, part of that amendment, the playground?
Yes,
Can I ask a question regarding the playground before the motion gets dealt with?
sure.
The site, as much as I like the idea of a playground on the site, it's very intensely developed right now. I would be interested in the developers' comments or APC members' comments about how that might be accommodated on the site.
Of all the comments that are being made and suggested, I think that one's going to be the most difficult to accommodate on the site. The first place my head went was to look at the park that I know has been developed just down the street. There's something that will be happening with the project as well as there's a contribution of CACs. Maybe some of those CACs could be used towards that park, and helping the park be developed because it is so close. So that is something that we would look at. But in terms of an on-site usable area, I have 2 little kids, and we go to the parks. We walk 500 meters, and we walk a kilometer, and we go to the parks that are in the area. They don't always have to be right in front. But the nice thing with little kids as well is, to your point, even if you put a really small program space in there, they're going to be running up and down the street. They're going to be going to the marina. They're going to be playing, like you said, hockey in the parking space, which I don't think is the end of the world. Kids are going to be kids, but a really small little playground that might be amenable to, say, 2 and 3 year olds is probably something we could look at accommodating, but probably not worth the effort. My suggestion, but it's something we could look at in detail. But that's where my head goes, knowing as somebody that goes to parks pretty much every day. It's worth the walk.
Yeah, I just find it difficult to conceptualize where it might be accommodated. And I'm not sure what we would have to lose to be able to accommodate that.
And I would leave that to the applicants to sort out, but it is in the OCP. There are no playgrounds nearby. I take your point about, you know, taking your kids in the car. This motion, yeah. So the motion's been seconded as including the playground, so it is up for a vote. So all those in favor again.
Sorry, comment. Can I add a comment before we vote?
Just to be clear, the motion put in the floor is open for discussion before vote.
Yep. Well, yeah.
Is it okay if I make a quick
Yeah,
comment?
go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to add that I in my head I was imagining it would probably take a small chunk of the parking spaces off of the surface lot. I can't really see where else it would go. But in terms of like reducing our heat island effect from surface parking, I see it as still positive. A compromise really from what I would have preferred to see.
Yeah. Okay, any more discussion before I call for the vote?
Just a question to staff. So with that recommendation, would you see that as a requirement of the development to have a playground on site, or a suggestion to the developer to work with staff and have a playground put on site?
So with these things, I mean, the recommendation, the wording says that the applicant or the property owner has to address these to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services, which is
Right.
my task to do that job. So
Right.
I work with the developer, and Selena and I both do look with them at their plans and think about where can we adjust things to meet these. We're not going to get 100%. It's not a zoning bylaw requirement. We see what can we do to work better towards meeting this guideline. And again, they're guidelines. So we see, is there some way that we can incorporate play in some area, like the guideline here, 25.620, provide amenities such as play areas, barbecues, and outdoor seating where appropriate. And it starts with design and internal courtyards too. A, do these things, and B, provide a balance of hard and soft landscape areas. So I would look at this and recall the APC wanted play areas to be addressed. So yeah, we would look at these and think, is there a way to incorporate a play area? Like thinking off the top of my head, we have that long straight walkway. Could we do something fun with the paving style? That's kind of a linear play area down the walkway and make a hopscotch pattern in play. Who knows? But we would talk to the developer about, is there a way to work something in here? Again, with the overlook, there's a design guideline being recommended to address overlook. So I don't think at this point they're going to be able to reorganize the internal layouts of the units. And by the building code, bedrooms need to have a window that opens. There has to be a fire exit, which would be a window. And there's only so many outdoor wall spaces here. So we're not going to be able to say there'll be zero overlook looking this way. And they're not going to substantially redesign the building because that would have to come back through committee of the whole and council. So we'll see what we could do in terms of the window layouts, the sizes, the types, anything that we could do there.
So
It's not always achievable.
Remember the project by the elementary school? Across from the elementary school. So what we did there was opaque glazing on the balcony.
Yeah, changing the balcony railings.
Which, because there were the townhouses right next, remember the ones?
Yep.
And there were concerns over overlook, and even that, you know, was something
It does
to
something.
mitigate the
That's right.
overlook. So
That's
it
right.
To your point, it doesn't have to be major design, it could just be
Yeah.
making the glazing opaque.
Yep. So the staff, we would look at these things with the applicant and see what can we do to better address the guidelines before the development permit is registered and before it moves on to a building.
Okay, any more discussion before I call the vote, Eric?
I'll just say that, since it is a recommendation and like you just address the process, I'm more in favor of voting with that, knowing that it's not a factor that they will install a playground. It's that they will work to address some sort of action in that direction. So yeah, I'm okay voting.
Just because ADHD, we're voting on a combination of playground, overlook, and is that it?
Streetscape.
Streetscape.
Or street.
Bike rack location?
We haven't got to that yet.
Okay.
I was going to add it afterwards.
And the shading in windows, that 24.4.9.
Okay, so shading in windows, and we're just gonna roll.
All right, yes. That's the vote. Okay, you ready for the vote?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried.
Great. Okay,
That was unanimously.
so Jamie, I don't want to lose your point. How are we going to capture?
Correct location? Yeah, I kind of wrote up just a general motion idea here ahead of time that I thought might be tweakable to make it work. I was thinking I could say I move that short-term bicycle parking be located within approximately 10 meters of all main entrances and should follow the BC Active Transportation Design Guide standards for bicycle rack design and placement.
So, before we get to a motion, can I just clarify with you, assuming that Allison, is there not something in the zoning bylaw already about the location of bicycle parking?
Covered them.
I thought it had to be near entrances.
There are guidelines that do more specifically state where they should be located.
In the bylaw.
In the parking bylaw.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, the class 2.
So Jamie, might be, correct me if I'm wrong, but your concern might already be covered in the parking bylaw.
Potentially. The only reason I hesitate to think it is covered is because other fairly recent buildings weren't done to what I'm suggesting. So, or relatively recently, say within the last 10 years.
So if I, just as a suggestion, Ruth, you're going to capture the discussion comments, right? At some point? Record of decision, are you going to do one of those?
Yes.
Yeah. So could we, defer to you, could we incorporate your point in there? And then it sounds like it's covered in the zoning bylaw.
I mean, if it's already covered, then it's covered. But it sounds like you were still looking it up.
I think it would fit is as an additional comment.
Yeah.
It's a comment
In
or
as a
as
comment.
a part of APC's recommendations. It's
I-
up to APC.
We put it in the record of decision, which to come to it.
After the
Yeah. I mean, I'm not terribly opposed to leaving it as a comment. Originally, my intention was to say it would be something like 7G or something like that. But it depends, because if it is essentially covered by the bylaw already,
Then again, if the building was designed in accordance with the parking bylaw and the bicycle parking wound up where it currently is,
right,
then
that's the other thing.
that's the issue that Jamie's having with it.
Right.
So it'd be better off putting it as 7G.
Yeah, because like I said, the design that we've been presented is already covering the bylaw.
25.3.9 specifically says covered short-term parking in highly visible locations, such as near primary building entrances. So it's already stated there. So if you include, we've already included that within 7A, I believe. So it's covered. Oh. Still have it in your comments?
Okay. It's brought up with the off-street parking bylaw, and it does require access to streets, but it doesn't specify the location in relation to an entrance.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my concern. When you look at other buildings around that have been built, it does technically fit that, where there is that access to streets. It's not really that far from the entrances, but because it's not specific enough, they can kind of be built wherever, like tucked around corners and stuff like that.
Okay, so let's, in the interest of keeping things moving, so I feel quite strongly about this point, so.
I've locked up a lot of apartment buildings before, and
Let's find a spot to fit it in. And
Sure. Okay. Yeah, so yeah. That's another one I like.
It's on the south side.
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's already, guideline 2539 is already in the staff recommendation.
Is it?
Yeah.
Under the new 7A,
Yes.
address guideline 2539 bicycle parking
yeah, okay.
access.
Okay.
So if that's
That's acceptable.
Yeah.
So
I
in the staff report, bottom of page 8 is where that guideline is, and then staff's comments on the location of them. Yeah, it says, like Selena's comment is already there. It would be ideal to have easily accessible short-term bicycle parking provided near both entrances to maximize convenience, which is like
yeah. Okay.
why you highlighted it in the
That's what
report.
So we've
Right,
got it
okay.
at 25.3.9. We'll make sure that your comments are picked up and.
That's something. Okay. Yeah, that works for me.
Okay.
And we had the vote. Correct, so we're all on the amendment. So now, want to go back to the main motion as
Sure.
amended?
You haven't addressed, 7D, E, and F. Just make sure
Oh,
they're-
yes, those are. Make sure. Tree removal, 7D, tree removal permits. E is a security, F is a deposit, so I don't think that's. Standard wording, I don't think there's any much for us to say there, so. Back to the motion as amended. So want to take a stab at that, someone?
We'd just be moving the motion as amended.
As amended.
Okay, so everybody's okay, okay, so. Motion as amended, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Eric. Okay, all those in favor of the motion as amended? Carried. Okay. All right.
Maybe it should have been added before, and I don't know if it can be done as a motion in writing, but I was hoping to add something about the ramp access to the unit. Maybe I wasn't quite quick enough. There's to get that in.
Let's make sure, because we're gonna do record of decision, right? So we'll make sure that gets captured in there.
Yeah. I think that was my other big one. Yeah.
So this is your chance to make your key points that you want to be captured in the record of decision. It just helps council get a bit of an idea of what was behind APC's recommendation. So we don't need to recite things, but if there's, Jamie, do you want to start off with your points about the ramp?
Yeah, I would just say that all exterior entrances, including ground floor patios, should be made accessible by ramp. Sorry. All exterior entrances, including ground floor patios, should be accessible by ramp.
All exterior entrances.
Including ground floor patios, be made accessible by ramp.
Obviously, maybe point one of the record decision. Obviously, point one of the record of decision would be that the APC thought that the development in general was well designed.
I think the second point is that the APC, together with the applicant, thoroughly explored alternatives to the location of the driveway. You folks really dove into that one. Alternatives to the location of the driveway to the surface parking. And then if I can carry on there, and that the applicant indicated their willingness to shift the access to the underground parking to provide additional space for the adjacent cherry trees or something to that effect, correct?
Shift the
Ramp to the underground parking in order to provide additional space for the cherry trees on the adjacent property. And then, sorry, I'm going to continue, I guess, and jump in wherever you want here. And that the APC, David, help me out here. The APC stressed another bullet. The APC stressed the importance of the engineering of the what's the correct word for that, Chris? Or whoever, the bridging over the between the trees. What do you call that? What's the technical term?
Oh, for the
Floating driveway.
floating driveway.
Floating driveway.
detail.
To accommodate, trucks and other large vehicles. Correct, David?
That's correct.
All right, those are the ones I can think of. Any other members of the commission have any other?
I was thinking maybe a slight tweak to the wording of that last one, about the driveway engineering. Do we want to specify, without further risk to the root systems of the trees or something along those lines?
Well, I think implicit in the importance of the engineering and the floating drive.
Yeah, okay.
So that those trucks don't compromise it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I think we captured it in the amendment to respect.
Yeah,
It's gonna have to be approved by staff.
of course, yeah. Okay.
Any other highlights that need to be captured? Yeah, I'll get to it in a second.
Just where the APC thought that the development in general was well designed, I think we should also add that APC supported the additional tree planting and canopy vision as part of this development.
Actually, Ruth, I'm gonna wordsmith that one. Can you make APC supported a separate bullet? Because I want to throw something after design. What was it, Robert?
Sorry, APC supported the additional tree planting,
Additional plantings.
tree planting and canopy vision for the property.
And then the first one, I thought the development in general is well designed, but 4th Street elevation requires further attention. Okay. Anybody else?
Maybe I'll put one more comment. No, this is something that didn't really come up in the discussions, but I feel like it's worth maybe a quick discussion about just the idea of whether or not these will stay as rentals in perpetuity.
It's in the wording.
So
Is it in the wording? Okay.
I think it was in the staff report,
Yeah.
but also the record of decision, the purpose is to capture the essence of what APC
What
talked
do we
about.
talk about?
So
Okay,
this is-
yeah.
we can't
So we'll
bring
do
it up.
Okay. Sounds good.
It's in.
It's in the report.
They have
Yeah.
been well discussed.
Yeah.
Having some thoughts about what Councillor Duck said at the beginning about council thoughts on this. I think it's worth mentioning that APC had lengthy discussion about parking.
Yeah.
Because that was something that,
We've been talking about it for a long time.
APC together with the applicant thoroughly explored alternatives to driveway surface parking.
Okay, no, it just, that's. leave it
Okay.
like that.
I'm not trying to make this thing.
No, that's, and I'm sure Councillor Duck.
Going, and then. Okay, Dave, you had something?
I was just curious, I'm not sure if it's because it already lives in here, similar to your comment, but one of the largest discussions was around the removal of tree 951. And I understand that that's in here, but if this is key highlights, should that be addressed as a recommendation?
We could throw it in there.
Yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah. Because that's the one that people cared about.
APC.
Yeah, it's the critical
It's the critical
discussion we've had.
Well, then it's doesn't option 2 essentially surround that, being as it's 0.4 of option 2, and that's what he's looking for.
Correct. I just me not familiar with this process and knowing that that's the critical thing that council will.
Yeah, I think the point is that APC considered it in depth. Even though it's in the recommendation, I think. We
Maybe,
could add that.
maybe we could alter bullet point number 2 and say APC discuss the removal of tree 951 thoroughly. Oh, sorry, 591.
I think it was 951.
Is it 951?
I think.
Uh,
Check.
Yeah, it was just-
tree
We could
number,
put in
whatever
brackets
it is.
Monterey cypress.
Yeah, 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 there you go. Yeah. Thoroughly. And supported additional tree planting. Vision.
Yeah. Okay, we're done. Thank you very much to all of you. Turning to the last item, Councillor Duck, anything to share from council? Okay. All right, motion to adjourn. Todd, seconder Eric. Thank you very much to all of you. That was a great first one out.